Hi, what's up everybody? This is Civil, and you're watching Civilopedia. So today we're going to talk about the Phoenicians, who used the cedar trees around them to perfect the art of shipbuilding and become the first maritime empire, all the way back in 800 BC. They invented the alphabet to keep track of all of their transactions, and they brought us the legendary queen, the OG founder of Carthage, Dido, who ran away from trouble to create a city that would rival Rome. Let's talk about it. So around the time of the end of the last episode about Ramses, 1200 BC, we see an event called the Bronze Age collapse. Civilizations like the Hittites, the Mycenaean Greeks, the Assyrians were completely wiped off the map, and Egypt lost all of its overseas territories and really went back into only its own land. Invasions from a mysterious sea peoples. The sea peoples came from the Western Mediterranean, and they quickly removed all of the civilizations in the region. We're talking going back down on the civilizational steps. Less cities, less works of writing, less glorious tombs, less glorious monuments. This is somewhat of a dark age, the Bronze Age collapse, after all. In this new decentralized era, city-states regained a lot of their own independence, and none were more successful than the Phoenician city-states along the Levant coast. Cities like Byblos, Tyre, Sidon, and Ugarit. The area slowly became famous in the entire region for their excellent crafts. They made ivory carvings, they invented glassblowing, and above all, they extracted a purple dye, which was unique in its time and was used by rich people for the next 1,000 years. Roman emperors, Byzantine emperors. The Phoenicians became very wealthy trading these goods, and eventually got to starting trading posts across the eastern Mediterranean to facilitate this trade, and sort of became the trading network of that age. 14 fortnights for your delivery, or your silver, back. The Phoenicians were able to run this trade network effectively because they had recently pioneered star-based navigation, which allowed them to effectively navigate the entire waters of the eastern Mediterranean safely and quickly. As more and more trading posts got set up, the Phoenicians were conducting trade far and wide and had a growing need to manage debts, agreements, and information trade across vast space and time. This led them eventually to creating the world's first alphabet, which was different from the existing cuneiform in Mesopotamia and hieroglyphics in Egypt. The Phoenician alphabet was unique because instead of using pictograms, which is to say a character for each word, they used letters, which you know all about. The Phoenician alphabet went on to become the most influential in history and is the basis for the Hebrew alphabet, the Greek alphabet, the Latin/Roman alphabet, and the Arabic alphabet. So combining their efficient navigation, writing, unique luxury goods, and just the system of trade, the Phoenicians became the first maritime empire in history. What this means is that a majority of their imperial power came from the sea and not from the land. The Phoenicians didn't rely on conquest to expand their empire. Rather, they used their trade system, which became vital for other empires as they needed those materials to keep the show running. Being a coastal people, the Phoenicians ate mostly fish, shellfish, olives, figs, and dates. They lived in multi-story stone or mud brick houses. Cities like Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos were heavily fortified. As they were built along the Mediterranean coast, they had to protect themselves from pirates. Men and women alike used linen and wool clothing, and the rich, of course, had purple dye fabrics. Their jewelry included gold, silver, and glass beads, which Phoenicians, as I remind you, were pioneers at making glass works. So now we start to get closer to the main hero of our story, Dido. And our story actually begins 600 years in the future with a Greek man called Timaeus living in Sicily at the time. He is the main source of writing, and he found specific interest in this topic because she's the founder of Carthage, who became a main rival of his own empire, the Romans. Timaeus writes us about an unnamed king of Tyre who leaves the city to his son and daughter to be ruled over equally. However, upon dying, the entourage of the son decide to make him the sole king and make sure that Dido, the sister, receives nothing. Deciding to secure a strong future for herself and being ejected from the crown, Dido decides to marry her uncle, the priest of Melkart, who is the chief god of the city of Tyre. Her uncle is thought by the people to be very rich and hiding a treasure somewhere. Pygmalion, Dido's brother, turned into sole king, hears about this treasure and decides to assassinate his uncle and his sister's husband in order to get access to that treasure. Now, it's worth mentioning at this point that Dido is actually a Greekified name, and her real name was actually Alyssa, which is a common Canaanite name at the time. Alyssa, now very distraught from the death of her husband, requests the king, her brother, aid so that she may move into his palace for protection. According to legend, at this point, her late husband comes to her in a dream and warns her that the king is no protector. Rather, he's the man who murdered him. When the servants of the king arrive into Alyssa's estate, in order to help her move into his palace, she decides to ask them to do something quite odd. She says, "Take these bags and throw all of them to the sea." Once they're done, she tells them that the bags were filled with the famous treasure, and that now that they have done this, they will face the wrath of the king if they don't escape. So they must escape with her and create a new world under her leadership. She convinces many of the servants and is joined by some of the senators of the city, who all get on a few ships and escape with a lot of the gold. Okay, so this is where the story gets a little bit of sus, because they make their first stop in Cyprus, and they meet the priest of the Temple of Jupiter. He joins their expedition, all is well, and then they abduct 80 prostitutes working on the beach to provide wives for the men. So I guess that happened. Eventually their convoy arrives at North Africa, where they land on the shores and meet a king of the area called Larbus, who is the king of the Libyan people in the region. Dido then pleads with the king to give her some land to start her own colony in order to escape the troubles that she ran away from. He agrees, and they agree on a deal where she would cut up a hide of an ox, and as much as the hide of the ox can encompass is the land that she will receive. The king thinks it should be a very small plot of land, but the Phoenicians are very good craftsmen, and they slice that ox hide into very thin strips, eventually encircling an entire nearby hill, where they create their fortifications, and they name the hill after hide, which is Byrsa. By the way, I know most of you haven't even played it, but in Civ 7, Byrsa is a world wonder. So Dido and her people are creating their own colony, and they actually do a very good job. The Libyan coast is situated in a very good point for trade, and they end up setting up their own colonies as far away as Lisbon. During this time, when the city of Carthage is being founded, they start to become prosperous, putting into work all of their unique technologies. The other kings of the region start to notice it, and one of them makes an approach on Dido, Alyssa. He says, "Alyssa, you have to marry me in order to unite our lands, or I will declare war on you." So Alyssa says, "All right, I'm going to marry you, but I have to do a special ceremonial pyre of my people to prepare for it." She prepares a huge bonfire, and she starts putting innocent people on it in order to honor the soul of her late husband, who was murdered back in Tyre. She then climbs upon the flames, claiming if this is how they want her to join her husband, then she shall do it, and slays herself with her sword. Metal, dude. And thus ends the storied and epic life of Alyssa, Dido as she's remembered by the Greeks and most of us. Although her life ended, Carthage actually just kept growing. In fact, it turned into its own empire after the original city-states in Phoenicia were eventually brought down from their golden age by a growing Neo-Assyrian empire. In this new climate, many of the Phoenicians fled to Carthage, who became the new empire of the Phoenician civilization, eventually becoming main rivals of Rome, with such legendary generals as Hamilcar and Hannibal Barca, which I'm sure we'll talk about in future episodes. Dido made her first appearance in a Civ game in Civ 2, where she was the female leader alongside Hannibal. She also appeared in Civ 5 and Civ 6. In Civ 6, Dido's unique leader bonus is, well, founder of Carthage. Cities with the Phoenician unique shipyard, Kothon, gained the unique Move Capital project, which enables Phoenicia to be the only civ in the game to be able to move their capital city from one location to another, just like the Phoenicians did when they lost ownership of their original city-states and had to relocate to Carthage. Furthermore, the Phoenicians gain additional trade route capacities after they build their government plaza and any building inside the plaza, showing us that the Phoenicians indeed had a very robust system of trade. The Phoenician civilization's civ ability is that they start the game with the Eureka for writing. This is, of course, because, well, they invented the alphabet. Also, coastal cities founded by Phoenicia and in the same continent always have the full loyalty, showing that it doesn't matter how far away the Mediterranean colonies were, they always kept loyal to their original Phoenician culture. And finally, settlers receive +2 movement and +2 sight while embarked on a ship. And they also pay no movement cost to embark or disembark, which is really to show that once these guys got out into the sea, they were moving faster than anyone else and they were settling all over the place. Fantastic description of their IRL into the Civ bonus. Love this one. The unique district for the Phoenician people is the Kothon, which replaces the harbor, a circular structure where they were able to construct ships more efficiently and more impressively than anyone else in the world at the time. The Kothon is half the cost to build. The Kothon doesn't just provide a bonus for building naval units, but also for training settlers. Once again, building on the Phoenicians' passion for spreading their colonies all over the Mediterranean. The Phoenician unique unit is called the Bireme, which they were absolute masters of building. They definitely pioneered shipbuilding in the Mediterranean Sea and actually also built ships for other nations, as long as they paid. Naval engagements in that period of time basically consisted of you trying to run down the opponent's ship with a bronze-wrapped bow ram, while avoiding being rammed yourself. This is the reason why you see biremes have eyes on their bow ram. This is why you see the Phoenician bireme has eyes on its bow ram in order to ward off evil. And that's it for the Dido and Phoenician culture episode. Thank you for watching this far. And please, if you haven't done this yet, like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me trying to make this go all the way. We're going to try to do every single leader. John Curtin, I'm going to get to you. You were born last, but I'm going to get to you. See you guys next episode.